Clement of Alexandria, an early church father, writes about the creation of the Septuagint. He's writing around 200 CE, and in Book 1 of Stromata, Clement states, "For it was the counsel of God carried out for the benefit of Grecian ears. It was not alien to the inspiration of God who gave the prophecy also to produce the translation, and make it as if it were Greek prophecy, since the scriptures, having perished in the captivity of Nebuchadnezzar, Esdras the Levite, the priest, in the time of Artaxerxes, king of the Persians, having become inspired in the exercise of prophecy, restored again the whole of the ancient scriptures." Typically, traditional ideas should be seen as suspect. Of course, as a rule, tradition usually presents impossibly early dates. And typically, tradition changes, getting far from an original understanding over time. Clement can't be necessarily trusted, but Clement doesn't even pretend that these works were passed down intact. He says they were destroyed and rewritten nearly 150 years later. Even if everything Clement says is true, for 150 years, Judaism would only have had oral tradition, but the least likely of his statements is that the Hebrew Bible existed before Babylonian captivity. That concept, that it was destroyed, only explains its absence. In the Babylonian Talmud, Sanhedrin 21b states, "Originally, the Torah was given to Israel in Hebrew script and in the sacred Hebrew language. Later, in the time of Ezra, the Torah was given in Ashereth script and Aramaic language." Another excerpt of Sanhedrin 21b states, "Of Moses it is written, and Moses went up unto God, and of Ezra it is written, he, Ezra, went up from Babylon. As the going up of the former refers to receiving the law, so does the going up of the latter. Concerning Moses, it is stated, and the Lord commanded me at the time to teach you statutes and judgments. And concerning Ezra, it is stated, for Ezra had prepared his heart to expound the law of the Lord his God, to do it, and to teach Israel statutes and judgments." At this point, we have a smoking gun moment as far as dating the modern Bible is concerned. Jewish sources indicate that their Bible came from Ezra as essentially a recreation of lost texts. Clement of Alexandria takes this concept as fact. Two things should be noted here. First, Jewish tradition states that the texts were non-existent and created by Ezra, and second, that Judaism doesn't have a problem with this concept. Judaism does not care when the texts were written. If it was divinely inspired, date is irrelevant. Ezra, constructing the works of Moses, is stating fact because he's divinely inspired, not because he was around at the time. It would be a terrible mistake to assume that Judaism cared about the dates of authorship. They simply don't care. Later works are perfectly acceptable. I had to find this mention of Ezra, and it's in Ezra chapter 7, verse 6. "This Ezra went up from Babylon, and he was a ready scribe in the law of Moses, which the Lord God of Israel had given, and the king granted him all his request, according to the hand of the Lord his God upon him." In its most ancient understanding, this verse tells of the reconstruction of the law of Moses by Ezra around 450 BCE. It may not be true, but the traditional evidence seems to point to the idea that the modern Bible cannot be dated earlier than around 450. Before that, there is only known to be oral tradition and an assumed text lost around 587 BCE. This would explain the lack of evidence for authorship before the Septuagint. Even if an original Hebrew text did exist around 300, it probably would not have been widespread or well copied. Only a select few would have had access, and the oldest scripts were probably not well preserved. And again, I can't say with certainty that the Hebrew Bible is really as old as 450, but clearly tradition says it isn't any older. Tradition also says that the date simply doesn't matter. Anything after 450 is perfectly acceptable to Judaism.